So far, within this set of videos, we have created quite a few slide styles, and one of those used 9 images. So by now, you will have a pretty good idea of how versatile slide styles can be. But if we're going to include backgrounds or artwork that's going to be a part of the slide style, it is pretty important that we accurately identify the main images in that style. If we're just using single images in a slide style, then we don't need to concern ourselves too much with the main image. But as soon as we introduce something like a background, as we're going to do here, we do need to identify that these are the images that should be main images, and this one is going to accompany the slide style every time it's applied. So let's take one other look at this option, and also we'll incorporate the animation using framing. I'm going to double click to bring the background down into place. Before I do anything else, let's select the Objects and Animation screen, go to the Properties tab, and we're going to tell the software that this isn't the main object. Main objects are the images we select to apply the slide style to. So let's remove that. Then we can go to the grey area, click to add an image, and I'll add this one here. I want the image to be slightly smaller. I just want to set up a bit of simple animation here. Going to just rotate it, move it a little bit to the left. I need to create a cloned keyframe, so I'm going to use Alt and Insert. But one thing I haven't done is actually arranged any time to carry out my animation. Should have done that before I opened the Objects and Animation screen, but no great problem. If we just close it for a moment, all I'm going to do is just put about 16 seconds there, and I think we'll give something like 12 or 13 for the animation I want to place. So I'm going to put that at the 13-second point. So between keyframe 1 and keyframe 2, I want my image to just rock a little bit the other way and slowly go from left to right. I don't want it to be too fast, I just want a little bit of movement so the image isn't static on screen. But I don't want it moving so fast that it's starting to distract us. And I think that's more or less what I had in mind, while the image remains on screen. But what we can also do, we can also look at adding a bit of style, which I know we've done before, but also some framing too, and we do need to give some thought also to the speed. Let's deal with the framing first, but what I may do with this in-car is go to the properties and make sure I remember before I do anything else to tick that to become the main object. Remember, this one is going to be included with all of the slide styles we apply, so we need the box unticked. The image we're going to use needs to be the main object. But what I'd like to do as well is add a little border. Now that's white on white, so we can't see very much of that. Let's change the color here. Let's change it to a sort of a mid-grey sort of color, and I'm going to switch to pixels and we'll drop this down to 5. Can't see too much with 5. Let's try 10. I think 10 looks okay. I'm going to click into the grey area. There we can just see a nice little bit of a line around the outside, because the framing is how we're going to zoom this image within the outer frame. And I think while we're in the properties section here, we'll also go to the shadow and we'll add that. That's a little bit heavy for me, so I'm going to click the customize. Just going to drop back the size a little bit, the distance a little bit, and even the opacity a little bit, just to give it a little bit of a 3D look. Remember, you can save a current shadow as a template, so if you've got use of a shadow throughout a project, once you create it like I've just done, you can save it. You don't have to create it again every time. But for our benefit, I think that is looking pretty good. Now let's switch back to the Animation tab and look at the framing, because the framing is particularly good and it is new in PicturesToExe 9. So between this keyframe and this keyframe, we're gently panning from left to right, and we've got a little bit of rotation too. What we're also going to do is zoom in, but within the frame. And we can do that by clicking and dragging to the right. And when we zoom in, if we get to a point where we're starting to lose an important part of the picture, we can use the other options to adjust them. So what we've got now, if I put my cursor back at the start and press play, we've got a very gentle movement from left to right as we zoom in on the bride and her father on the way to church. And we've chosen to put the keyframe there before the image is removed from the screen. So we're going to come to a gentle stop. Hence, we need to think about speed. In fact, it may have been a good idea if I put a blank here. I'm going to put Control or Alt S, and of course I don't want a black blank with a wedding, so I'm going to go to my slide options, solid color, click the black, change it to white. I've only done that so that when we look at this in the objects and animation screen, we can see that the animation is going to come to a stop about a second before it starts to fade off screen. So of course we've got the opportunity to drop this back a bit if we feel we've got enough seconds to do what we want to do. But now let's think about speed, because what we're doing here is panning, rotating, and we're also framing. But if we think about what this is showing us, all of the animation is going to begin when the image is almost hidden, because it's only starting to appear on screen here. So I think the speed that we can use here is the slow down option. So we're going to need that for all three parts of the animation we have, which is the framing, the zoom, and also the pan. So let's go to the pan first. Animation speed, slow down. Zoom, we'll select the same. And then down to framing, and we'll do the same there. But rather than view it in this window, I think it would be better if we took a view starting with the blank, because now when we look at this in the mini player, it does give us the opportunity to see the fade on and off, and that's quite important when we're evaluating animation. So with the first blank selected, let's press play and we'll just watch what we have on the mini player. And that looks pretty good. Didn't come on too fast, but it is going to come to a stop lovely and gently. That suits me fine. And then it's on screen just a few seconds before it leaves. I think that all looks pretty well balanced. Now we can turn our attention to creating the slide style. But every time we do this, we really should give some thought to, have we created the right main image? Because any time a slide style goes wrong, certainly in my case, it's because I've been working so fast that I've forgotten to select the right image. Now it's not a great problem, we can always go back in and adjust it. But we know we've done that here, so we can go to the slide style, tools, create the style. I'll make a temporary category for this, I think, and I'll just call it wedding. And I'll just call this style 1 just for speed, and click create. So I could now select other images, and I've just got 3 for demo purposes, and we can drop them down into our slideshow. They're selected automatically because I've selected them above, so I can go to my slide style, to my wedding, double click number 1, and there we have our slide style applied to all of the images. We'll just test that by putting the cursor on the first one and press play. We'll just have a look at how this one ends. We like the way it comes to a gentle stop on screen just for a short time, and as it fades out, the next one will start to come on. And of course we've got the opportunity to adjust the transition times as well. Now of course, once we've got one slide style made, it's very easy to make a derivative of that style. Because if I go back to my original, for example, and I open up the objects and animation screen, I could go back to the first of my keyframes, for example, and I could change it slightly. I could change the size of it. I could have it rocking the other way a little bit, and I could even change the framing. But then I could create a second slide style. So if we're creating a slide style, and I think a wedding slideshow is a good example, we can have a similar background and a similar technique, but with subtle variances. So we're not seeing the same thing over and over again. Because if we created 3 or 4 derivatives of our original slide style, then it's very easy to space them out through the slideshow to give us the variety we want. So having made those changes, then I could go to my slide style, Tools, Create, and it automatically picks up the previous name we created, so it wouldn't be difficult to just change that to 2, and so on. So let's leave that at 2, that's the original. Let's go to this one and apply 2 to that. So putting the cursor there, we've got a very similar technique used, but with some subtle differences. And I'm sure with the other controls that we've got in the objects and animation screen in PicturesToExe, we can come up with other variations too.